Canada has a mass immigration problem, and it continues to get worse, and it is making life harder for not only Canadians, but immigrants themselves. This is the thing about the issue that we have going on. It's not just hurting Canadians, it's hurting recent immigrants, immigrants who've been here for a while. It is damaging to the entire country. Now, I am not blaming the immigrants. This is a condemnation of the government itself. The government of Canada is clearly to blame for everything that is going on. It is their policies. They are encouraging this. They are the ones facilitating this at the expense of Canadians because they are not willing to allow our economy and GDP to fall. They think they need to pump in all of these bodies. It is damaging Canada, kicking the can down the road, and the economic backlash from this, from us being unproductive and relying on these policies, could be so devastating that we could end up in a depression worse than Canada has ever seen. This needs to stop to protect Canadians, immigrants, and other countries who we are clearly abusing for this system. Now, don't forget to get the Axe the Tax shirt down below, guys. It really helps support the channel. It is another issue that we are dealing with in Canada. The shirts are there. There's other merch, but please buy the shirts. We got to spread the message around. Let's get into it.
Canadian identity is under siege. Mass immigration is diluting the culture while quality of life plummets. With immigrants making up 20% of the population, 10 to 20 years, the native Canadian population will be outnumbered. From a housing market on the brink to public services stretched beyond capacity, we explore the harsh realities and the driving forces behind Canada's dramatic shift in immigration policy. Could this signal the end of Canada's open-door policy? Or are these just empty promises as the situation spirals out of control? Here is why Canada has had enough. What's fueling the shift in Canadian public opinion about immigration? Imagine a nation with a rich heritage, where traditions have been built over centuries, and shared values and culture form the bedrock of society. Now, picture that fabric being stretched, frayed, and torn apart. That's the situation in Canada today.
Yep, and a big thing for that is I was actually just talking to somebody about, if you watch my channel, you guys know that I lived in Japan previously. I like Japan as a country, and one of the things that they are so impressive with is their level of social cohesion. And why that's important is because Japan in the 80s and 90s kind of hit a massive recession. There was a big real estate bubble. There was all these things that people keep comparing Canada to. The reason Japan was able to weather the storm and still be, a top economy and a bit of an economic powerhouse is because they have such high social cohesion that they are willing to work together and everybody wants to pull in the same direction and kind of do their part. It's not, what can this country do for me? What can I do for this country and help support it? The old JFK quote. So Japan has such a good level of patriotism that they will put the country and the community first. When you start to break down that social cohesion and everybody's pulling in separate directions, you now have that one single goal that's being spread apart versus, oh, let's all chug along a train line and get to the destination we need to get to.
Largely due to the country's high rate of immigration, this isn't just a trickle of newcomers that the system can easily absorb and integrate, it's a flood. The sheer number of people pouring into Canada from diverse backgrounds is unprecedented. While diversity is often hailed as a strength, there's a threshold beyond which it can start to become a liability. When the cultural influx is so overwhelming, it doesn't lead to a melting pot. Instead, it leads to cultural fragmentation. On the ground, this looks like a society where Native Canadians are starting to feel like strangers in their own land. There's a growing sense of unease and resentment as the cultural landscape shifts rapidly. It's not just about language barriers or different customs, it's about a fundamental change in the way people relate to each other and to their nation. When people no longer share the same foundational values and traditions, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain social cohesion. Canada's population surged by 1.3 million people in 2023 alone.
Yeah, and we are on trend to beat that number. And, obviously you saw in a lot of the B-roll there, they're showing a lot of Indian people, and I'm not like attacking them specifically, but they've clearly come in a mass group over the last 4 years. It's such a level that even if you talk to an Indian immigrant who came here 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whose families came to Canada to build, be part of the culture, they're like, yeah, we have too many Indians. There's too many. So I didn't want to like specifically single them out, but they are clearly coming over at such a higher percentage that we have to face the facts. They are coming over. The diaspora is getting too large. They are now impacting our politics. We know that there's foreign interference. We know that there are levels of communities being, I just saw there was citizen courts being held in their communities. That's not something you can have because like he said, I do agree to some level that immigration and diversity is a strength of a country to a certain extent. The percentage has to be so small because as soon as it starts to grow too large, then you start to shift demographics and you start to shift cultural behavior of the country, which is why the immigrants came there in the first place. Because remember, some of those things that flashed up was like housing's becoming a problem for immigrants. Of course it is, because if too many people come over and we don't have the facilities to absorb them, then there's no way for us to actually help them build the life that they were promised. Because remember, when they talk to these recruiting agencies, they are promised the world because these recruiting agencies are just salespeople trying to make a buck, and they lie to them all the time.
This dramatic increase has led to a significant rise in Canadians believing the country has accepted too many immigrants. This influx puts immense pressure on housing, healthcare, and essential services. The average home price in Canada skyrocketed to over $700,000 in 2023, making it nearly impossible for many Canadians to afford a home. Healthcare is another area in crisis. Overcrowded hospitals are becoming the norm. Schools are bursting at the seams, with classrooms beyond capacity, leading to a noticeable decline in the quality of education. Many Canadians are struggling with job insecurity and rising living costs. Immigrants are competing for limited resources like housing and jobs, fueling resentment. The unemployment rate among immigrants who had been in Canada for less than 5 years was 11.7% compared to 7.5% for the Canadian-born population. Lines at food banks are longer, and more Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. Canadians have always been welcoming to immigrants, but opinion polls consistently show that most Canadians believe there should be limits on the number of immigrants accepted. This widespread belief stems from the understanding that while immigration can boost economic well-being, there's a limit.
Yeah, and so I grew up in what would be considered a lower income white trash community, and I've never heard this level of we can't afford to put food on the table, but at the same time, I grew up in what would be considered rural white trash, blah, 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 and we had no problem with immigrants growing up. That was never a discussion of Canada's got too many immigrants. That was never a discussion because it was done sustainably and correctly for years when we were building Canada into being the country that it was, 9 years ago. So we were on a relatively good track. Then what happened? Mass immigration happened because immigration is meant, when they say it's economically viable and it helps us, that's when you have a giant sector that needs a ton of immigration. Let's say it's like, wow, our mining industry is exploding right now. We need tons of people to come over and work in the mines. What does the immigration sector do? They start recruiting and putting points on those people who have that experience or going into those fields. What happened is that went out the window. Our government basically made it free and unlimited to get to Canada with all of their recent changes. Obviously, we have the student scams and we have all of these other things, but this new caretaker scam and everything is just a scam from the government to pump in more people so they can kick the can down the road, pretend our GDP is fine, and allow us to be economically sterile. So, there is an argument for immigration. The way that it's being done right now is not the way.
Most Canadians realize that the economy has an absorptive capacity. When population growth outpaces housing stock, public infrastructure, and business capital, it reduces capital per person, lowering labor productivity and average living standards. So why isn't the government doing anything about it? It seems the government is either incapable of addressing these issues or they are deliberately forcing Native Canadians to compete for lower wage jobs with immigrants. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau revealed a plan to significantly expand immigration. Since Trudeau took office in 2015, the number of new immigrants has already increased from approximately 300,000 to 400,000 annually. Now, Canada aims to welcome 500,000 permanent residents each year by 2025. This plan is designed to bolster the Canadian economy, addressing labor shortages and a declining birth rate by prioritizing skilled immigrants.
They say that, but they don't prioritize, one, the right immigrants. Two, there is no labor shortage. Every single person I know applying for a job cannot get a job right now. Every single person. We're talking entry-level customer service jobs, whatever it is. It takes them months and months because, again, this is for you immigrants out there. They are using you. This is not to help you. You are being used to help suppress wages from the big corporations and pretend that Canada is doing well. They are taking your money, that $30,000 that you're putting into school so that you can skip the line and get your permanent residence. It's just being taken from you. There is not the job and opportunities that you're being promised. There's not housing. We've done videos on this channel. You're going to end up in a basement apartment with 10 other people. That's what happens. You are being used. This video is not just immigration needs to stop. Native Canadians are getting screwed. This is also a wake-up call for the immigrants who watch it, guys. This is not good for anybody.
Canadians increasingly favor a different leader over Trudeau to head the Liberals in the next election. The multiculturalist approach is under scrutiny. This isn't about xenophobia or racism.
Yeah.
It's about the very real and legitimate concerns of Native Canadians who see their way of life being eroded. They see their communities changing beyond recognition, and they worry about what this means for their children and grandchildren. They're asking, what will be left of our culture, our values, and our identity in a few decades? The government and the media often portray this as being for the greater good. They claim that immigration is necessary for economic growth and that diversity is a strength. But there's a fine line between embracing diversity and being overwhelmed by it. When the balance tips too far, it starts to do more harm than good. Why are more Indians choosing Canada over other?
A perfect example is if you have an orange, that is so unbelievably healthy for you. If you eat an orange, you get all these natural fibers, these natural sugars. It fills you up. It's low calorie. That orange is great for you to eat, okay? If you have 3 glasses of orange juice, you've now had 25, 30 oranges, however many it is to squeeze all of that in there. So now your body's going, what are you doing, man? You just had 3 glasses of orange juice. So a single orange is awesome for you. 30 oranges in juice form is not good for you. So this is basically the immigration argument. 1 orange, sustained, reasonable immigration is great for Canada. 30 oranges is horrible for Canada. People are struggling. They are hungry. They are going homeless. Everything is getting worse. It doesn't have to be this way. Canada has the opportunity to be an amazing country still, even with all of these things, we have the potential. It's not over yet. We just need better social cohesion. And honestly, unfortunately, we are going to have to kick out a lot of people, which is going to hurt Canada. So Canadians, be prepared. When we do start kicking out a lot, it's not going to happen. If we were to start kicking out a ton of these people, Canada's economy will plummet. We are going to enter a massive recession. Housing will crash. Everything will fall. There will be blood in the streets. We need to be prepared that that's what happens. But that's what it'll take to rebuild, honestly.
Other countries. Canada's express entry system has attracted thousands of skilled workers from India by offering a straightforward and quick pathway to permanent residency. In 2023 alone, over 85,000 Indians were admitted to Canada through various immigration streams, making them the largest group of new permanent residents. The ultimate goal?
That was in a single year, and that's basically an entire, decent-sized Canadian city.
Is not just to work abroad, but to secure permanent residency and eventually citizenship. Canada makes this process relatively smooth and achievable. But it's not just about immigration policies. Canada offers a quality of life that is highly appealing to Indian immigrants. The multicultural society, robust healthcare system, and strong education infrastructure are significant draws. Despite recent policy changes, such as caps on study permits introduced to address the housing crisis, Canada remains a preferred destination. These caps have reduced the number of foreign students by 35%. Why are
Yeah, people don't understand that like India still has so many people that even if it's like, oh, Canada starts to suck because it's getting, our services are stretched and all these things, there's still enough people who literally live in mud huts in India who don't have power, don't have internet, who are like, yeah, I'd live to Canada. I would try to find a way to make it work there. And it's just bodies that we can't facilitate, unfortunately. But then the funny thing is, they do say, oh, well, Canada has free healthcare and has high quality healthcare. But ironically, that's being destroyed by the people coming over. So again, immigrants, all of the benefits you're being sold are slowly dwindling, are slowly getting worse. So you're starting to come over and risk all these things for benefits that are just not going to be there.
Are illegal migrant encounters rising dramatically at the US-Canada border? For those unfamiliar, flag polling is when non-Canadian residents leave and re-enter Canada, often at a U.S. port of entry, to get same-day immigration services. This practice has been skyrocketing, causing significant issues at border crossings. Officials in northern New York are particularly vocal about this, urging Canada to end in-person immigration services at the border. Over the past 3 years, illegal migrant encounters at the US-Canada border have skyrocketed more than 1,000%. This surge raises serious concerns about border security and the integrity of the immigration system. Is Canada...
So I would love, for it to be just convenient to be like, oh, okay, well, that's the immigrants' problem. They're doing it illegally. And it is, because they are breaking the law, kind of. But at the same time, this behavior is being encouraged by the government. So we can't even blame those people. We honestly can't. We can only blame the government. Guys, all of this has to do with government policy, because this would not be able to be facilitated if the government didn't allow it. It all comes down to that. There's people at the border who are like, I'd love to stop the people. Our hands are tied. We're not allowed to because of the policy. So again, it would be perfect to be like, yeah, well, why don't they stop? It's like there's this horror movie, The Strangers, I believe, and there's this like famous line, and they have the people tied up, and they're like, why did you do this? Why are you attacking us? And they basically said, because you were home. And that's supposed to be scary because it's like, you were just the random people that we chose to do this. That's the same mindset. Like, why are you coming over illegally? Because you're letting us. And it's like, yep, you're right. We are. So I guess keep on coming, baby.
Is rapid population growth sustainable? According to the 2021 census, 8.3 million Canadians, or 23% of the population, had an immigrant background. This latest increase means that in a Canada of over 40 million people, 1 in 4 residents is either a temporary or permanent immigrant or was born abroad. This proportion of newcomers is the highest since Confederation, surpassing the previous record of 22.3% set in 1921. For comparison, the immigrant share of the U.S. population is about 14% today. Immigration has been virtually the sole driver of Canada's population growth in recent decades. The federal and provincial
reason being, as we continue to pump in immigrants, Canada continues to get more expensive, and we keep discouraging childbirth because Canadians go, I can't afford to feed myself right now. How am I going to have kids? That being said, guys, make sure that you do try and find a way to have kids. It's still possible. Don't get discouraged. If you want to have kids and that's important to you, you can make it work. Guys, we need to build better communities around having kids and doing these things, because if you want to, don't stop because of money issues. There's always a way to make it work.
Provincial governments set targets for the number of permanent residents and refugees to be admitted each year, considering regional economic and demographic requirements and measures to facilitate integration into Canadian society. From 2000 to 2015, Canada's annual immigration intake ranged from 220,000 to 260,000. The numbers have surged between 405,000 and 485,000 from 2021 to 2024.
So, if you are either a Canadian or an immigrant who was around for 2020 to 2015, which is, I'm assuming, almost everybody who's watching this video, comment down below what your thoughts were on immigration during that time and what your experience was as an immigrant during that time. Because I've spoken to immigrants and they said, when I moved here, I had no problem with, like, you know, discussions about immigration or talking to people or how they reacted to me and how they accepted me, all that stuff during 2015. Now, this level of distrust and hate and everything is growing and building because of a mass immigration and government policies.
The goal for 2025 and 2026 is to welcome 500,000 new immigrants annually. By the first quarter of 2024, the number of non-permanent residents in Canada had quietly doubled to 2.7 million, including temporary workers, international students, and asylum seekers. Countries like Denmark, Australia, and Germany have already taken steps to curb immigration. Canada, however, remains resistant to adopting similar measures. Canada's political correctness stifles honest debate about immigration, resulting in policies that are out of touch with reality. This reluctance.
Yeah, guys, just so you know, I had a girl from who I was going to go out on a date with find my YouTube channel. After she found my YouTube channel, she didn't want to go on a date anymore because she thought I was right-wing. So it's like, you know, it still is, even though we're just talking facts, we're just talking numbers. You know, I'm losing dates over this, so guys, buy the shirt, axe the tax. I'm losing dates over this, guys.
To address the issue head-on risks creating a low-cohesion society as cultural and ethnic divisions grow. It's time for an honest conversation about this. At what cost are these immigration policies being pursued? Are Canadians willing to sacrifice their cultural heritage and social cohesion for the sake of political correctness and economic arguments?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, because all the immigrants want to come here because of Canada's social cohesion, because it was so strong, it was welcoming, it was safe. So I think changing that is not going to be good for anybody, again, including the immigrants. So buy the Axe Attack shirt. Like I said, guys, I'm losing dates over this. And thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you have not. I appreciate you guys, all your comments, everything. Have a great rest of your day.